Hello everyone, this is the first video of series on AWS function. With this video series, I'm going to cover basic functionality to more advanced features of the Lambda function. That's include not only creating the Lambda function, but also performance, security, integrate with other services like SQS, DynamoDB, Kinesis, and many more, plus troubleshooting. The troubleshooting is a wide area when the Lambda start having issues. So I'm going to talk about something called cold start and fixing cold start to reduce the latency. Furthermore, I'm going to cover Alias, versioning, concurrency, and the state machine. So those are the more advanced features of the Lambda function. So if you are interested with any other topic or need to know something specific, please comment below so that I can change the priority on incoming videos. Just before kickoff, as usual, please like and subscribe. It would be really appreciated. Let's start. What is Lambda function? Lambda function is a compute service and fully serverless which allow you to run your code without provisioning or managing servers. Conventional way of running application is the create server or the virtual machine, then deploy and run. If you want to support more loads or requests, then you have to increase the CPU, memory of the underlying hardware, or maybe you need to purchase more powerful hardware. But with the Lambda function, you just need to set the configuration, example memory, and it scale in and scale out based on the request or load. What does it mean? So let's say you have a web application which was created using the Lambda, and on the Black Friday, the sales are drastically going up. So in this case, the Lambda function create a more instance, mean scaling out to cater that temporary load. When the Black Friday sales is over, the Lambda function is scaling in. You don't need to worry about hardware at all. And more importantly, you have to pay only for the usage. That is the best feature of the Lambda function. Other than that, you get a free quarter for each month. That is 1 million requests per month and 3.2 million seconds of compute time per month. That is good enough code to try out the Lambda function. Trust me. This free quota is always free again. It means you can enjoy this free quota even after your first year of the AWS account. Let's have a quick look on the Lambda function usage very briefly before I start going to the practical. File processing is the first one. You can easily integrate with the AWS S3 bucket. When a file is uploaded to S3 bucket, it's automatically triggered and processed by the Lambda in a real time. The second one is stream processing. You can use the Lambda function to process real stream data using the Kinesis to tracking transaction, order processing, click stream, and log filtering etc. Third one is a web application, which is important. Combined with the API gateway, a Lambda function can create powerful web application that automatically scale in and scale down. This is one of the bigger area where the Lambda is used. The fourth one is a backend, IOTA backend. The build serverless backend using Lambda function to handle web, mobile, IoT, and the third-party API request. Finally, the mobile backend, of course, build backend using the Lambda and the AWS API gateway to authenticate and process API request. This is use AWS Amplify to easily integrate with your iOS, Android, web, or React Native front end. These are some of the usage of Lambda function, and we will try them one by one on coming videos in practically. Cool. That is pretty much high level overview of Lambda, but many things we need to know once we start working on the Lambda function practically. Let's jump into AWS Console and get your hands dirty. I'm in AWS Console. Let's see where we can find the AWS Lambda. So you can find the Lambda service or Lambda function either click on the services and compute. Under compute, you can see the Lambda, or you can search the Lambda in the text box. That's the easy one. You can see the very first service. Click on the Lambda. Then this is the landing page for the Lambda. So I think it's easy to, believe it's good to go with the menu item in the left side. Quickly go through the menu item. Let's say click on the first item, which is dashboard. This is the AWS Lambda dashboard page. This shows high-level view of all the Lambdas in this particular account. With the free tier, what you get the maximum concurrency of 10. That limit is 1000 for non-free tier. Once you start paying, you get 1000 concurrency limit. And actually, what does it mean? You can run, in this case, you can run 10 instances of any Lambda code for given time. If it is an exit, that Lambda get throttled. Then it shows the high level account level metrics for the Lambda function. These metrics are really helpful to see health of the Lambda and troubleshooting if there are any issue. We will see these metrics with the data. Currently we don't have any data. Once we start working on the Lambda, so we will see some data, and let's go, then we will go through the each metrics to find out, okay, what are the useful, what are the scenario it's going to useful. Then the second menu item is application. Lambda doesn't work alone. The most of the time it works with the other AWS services to make meaningful tasks. For example, the processing a file. In that case, the task could be use S3 bucket or API gateway along with the Lambda function. So the application is a kind of a bunch of services, including Lambda in this case, which are working to perform a work or task. If I quickly show you a sample application which provided by AWS, so if I click on the create application, and what you can see, some of the skeleton or half-baked templates to create an application. If I click on the file processing, for example, the very first one, what you can see, it uses AWS S3 along with the AWS Lambda. If I go back, if I click on the schedule job, there are so many items. If I click on the schedule job, what you can see, it's this application use CloudWatch event along with the AWS Lambda. More on that, you can see that this application, you can give application name, select the runtime, and plus you can see, okay, where do we paste the actual source code? It could be code commit, which is in the AWS, and or you can use a public usual your GitHub library repository. So that is the application. Then if you go to the function, okay, this is where all the Lambda function sits. You can create a function over here. So this is where we will come back and create a function. Then the code signing, under additional resources, code signing. Code signing configuration. This can be used to protect your code by signing with predefined configuration. You can create a signing configuration and attach to your Lambda function code, which makes sure the code you are running inside the Lambda function is signed and trusted. So the second one is a layers. Layers is something, think about Lambda function provide various runtime environment to run your code. Example, Python, Node.js, Java, .NET, or Go, and so many other environment. But still, if you want to run your code on your custom runtime, then you can use the layers, which has a full control of runtime environment. Then one of the example is like, for example, if you want to run some Selenium, and that's where we are using some layers. So we will come and do some experiment on the later on. And the left replica, right? This is another one. Okay, we get the network in NetApp. Yeah, I don't know what is this. Let's forget it. And the replicas. Replica. This is come to this stage with something called a Lambda at edge and a Cloudfront. So in brief, the Lambda at edge used to improve performance and reduce the latencies. So we will have some videos in later, planning to do some later with the Lambda at edge. So that's where we can see the replica. And lastly, step function. AWS step function is an orchestration service which helps to coordinate multiple Lambda function. Let's say if you want to create we are in the step function. Let's say you can see in the description. Let's say if you want to create a workflow with the Lambda function, That is where we can use the step function capabilities. Right, that's the whole menu item in the Lambda menu. Let's go to a function and let's create a new function from the scratch. Let's see what are the options to create a Lambda function. Click on the create function. As you can see, there are mainly three options. The first one, author from the scratch. The second one is a user blueprint. A third one is a container image. Let's go one by one to get some idea. The first one is a author from scratch. If you want to create a Lambda from the scratch without using any template, then this is the option. For the beginner, this may be the best option to start with, and this needs a few inputs. The function name, this is identifier of the Lambda function, and then the runtime. You can select whatever the runtime you want to run your code or application. This keep updated with the latest version of all the well-known language runtime. For example, it supports latest version of the node, which is 20. Then the architecture. You can select the architecture based on the CPU, based on the your CPU. So in terms of cost, ARM64 is cheaper compared to the default architecture, which is x86. Then the permission. AWS has a great way to handle permission. In this case, the Lambda function needs necessary permission to perform some action or task. Example, the Lambda function need to call DynamoDB. The role which attached to the Lambda function must have enough permission to do that DynamoDB operation. The default roles for the Lambda function come with uploading Amazon logs to the Amazon logs. If we open the change default execution role, if you see the very first one, create new role with the basic Lambda function. Let AWS to create a new role with the default permission. So the second option, if you have a existing role with the necessary permission, you can select this one. The third option is create a new role on the fly with using the AWS templates, existing templates. You can give it a role name, and you can select the existing permission. For example, if you want to get the object from the S3, you can, if you search the S3, you can see some of the predefined policies. And then if you go to the advanced settings, I'm gonna select the existing, let the AWS to create a role. And under AWS and AWS advanced settings, so enable code signing. This is something we were talk about at the very beginning. So if you want to attach a code signing for this function, you can attach. So currently we don't have any signing configuration. Other one is enable function URL, which is you can get the HTTPC URL to invoke this function. Other one, enable tags. Tag is consists with the key and value. You can use to filter and the search resources based on the filter. Not a functional feature of the Lambda, but if you come to the cost management, this is really helpful. The last one, enable VPC. You can mention the VPC, existing VPC, then the Lambda can access private resources inside that particular VPC. Then you can create a function. So if I quickly go through the second option, which is a user blueprint. If you want to create a Lambda function using the existing sample code or configuration, then this is the option. So AWS gives many a template to start with. Let's say you want to create a Lambda function which is trigger when the file is uploaded to S3 bucket. So you can search S3, and then you can come up with you can see that it's come up with the two template, one for the Python, other one for the Node.js. Once you select the Node.js one, and then it's give it a name, you can give it a name, and based on the blueprint use it select the runtime and the architecture, and then as we discussed the execution role as it is for the same for the author from the scratch. And then So what you can see the actual Lambda functions, a sample code. What you can see, it's use AWS SDK to retrieve the object from the S3. This is sample code. Then as this is what we asking to get the S3 object from the S3, so we need to specify the what is the S3 bucket. So this is where you can give the S3 bucket name and the event type. So if you go to the event type is used to figure out in which scenario the trigger should be happen. It could be at the creation of the object or a deletion of the object. So then let's select the deletion of the object, or let's select the creation of the object. Then the suffix and prefix are used to narrow down the scope. If you want to trigger the Lambda for subfolder, then the bucket, the full bucket, you can use prefix and suffix this option. Lastly, Lambda will add a necessary permission to this role, which can access the AWS S3. So then you can click on the create function. This will create something with the Lambda function with the predefined code. So you just need to, you don't need to write the whole code from the scratch. So then if you go to the third option, third option using the container image. Let's say you want to create a Lambda function on your custom runtime or the runtime environment where AWS doesn't support yet. Then this is the option you can use. Here you have to select the image. So give it a name, and you need to select the image from the ACR. So if you are using this option, first you need to create an image like a Docker image and push to AWS ECR, then select that image from browsing here. Currently we don't have any image, so that's why it's empty. If you have a image, you can select over there. Then you have a few options to override some image variable over here. Endpoint, CMD, the work directory. Usual scenario is come with the images. Then you need to select the architecture and the permission as usual. So that's pretty much for the third option. For this demo, I'm using the first option, which is author from scratch. Let's create a new Lambda function with the Node.js runtime. Click on the create function and select the author from scratch and give it a name, demo1, and select the runtime as a Node.js 20. Architecture is keep it as a default and let the AWS to create the role for me, and then keep all the advanced setting with the defaults value. Click on create function, which will create a Lambda function and a role which attached to this Lambda function. The default role has a permission to upload the logs into CloudWatch. This is a function overview. Let's go through each item in this page to see what they really mean. It's good to know all the fundamentals of the Lambda, which will help to create production level application. The function overview has an overview of the function. If you click on the template, this is a diagram, and click on the template, you can get a SAM template for this function, which can use to automate the creation of this function. You can toggle between the diagram mode and template. And let's see what is throttle. Okay, throttle button. You can click the throttle button if you want to block any request to this function. This same function is under configuration. If I quickly show you, go to the configuration and concurrent and concurrency and click on the edit. And if you go to the receive concurrency, I'm going through the more detail in the later. So if I set to 0, you can see this is save, and the this function cannot be invoked while the reserve concurrence 0. This is pretty much throttle, so it does the same thing. So I'm going revert back, and it does the same thing. If I click on this, what does it do? It's basically it's throttle, and you can see the edit concurrency set to 0. The concurrency set to 0. I'm revert back and switch on that, and copy errand, pretty obvious. And the action, we do have a publish new version, create alias, and the delete function. We will cover this item in the coming video. So delete function obvious, delete function, and the rest of the new version and the create alias we will do in a later. Then the export to application composer. This is a new feature. This option can be used to visualize the application and modify using drag and drop pattern. So for example, if I click on this, it asks to create some bracket, and once you confirm and create project, what's happening, you can see it's giving some composer, and you can drag and drop. For example, if you want to integrate API with our Lambda, you can drag and drop, and you can do some changes. So you can see, select the connection, and it will show what kind of the code you need to write. So pretty much this shows the GUI representation, visualization, to you can do easily build. You can build the application more easily. So I'm not going to do this one. I'm leave it and cancel it. And the other one is a download function. If you want to download the code and share with someone, this can be used. So pretty much this download the whatever code under this tab. Add triggers. This is a very useful feature and help to integrate with the many AWS services and some other third-party providers. If I click on that, what you can see, many AWS services, for example S3 and the Alexa, API gateway. If you go further down, some AWS IoT, CloudWatch Logs, and Apache, Kinesis, some data stream, and plus some third-party providers. So if you go to the at destination, the other one, this is the opposite of the trigger. When the Lambda is triggered, it execute. Basically, it's run the defined code. The execution can be success or fail. We can configure a few different AWS services to notify the success or failure. For example, it supports SNS, SQS, event bridge, or it can be trigger another Lambda function, and you can give a destination. If you select the SQS, you can give the destination of the particular SQS. And of course the permission, so we need to get some permission, so it will automatically add. So that's how the destination works. The code tab. This is a place where you can edit your code. As you can see, we added the Node.js application, and it's come with the index.mjs, and this is a function. What you can see, this is the editable. What you can see, you can write the code. Let's dump the event, and events. So it's a basic IDE, but it still supports internet sort of feature. The code can be uploaded as a zip file or from the Amazon S3 location. So if we go to the test one, the next step, we will come this one later, more on later, once we start creating the real application. If you go to the test, this is a place where you can test your Lambda function. You can give it a name, let's say test one, and from the sharing setting, either you can keep it as a private or shareable. If you set private, you can see. If it's shareable, you can share this test function with the other developers. And plus in the template, you can see the hello world. This is a template it's selected. You can select some of the sample event. For example, if you want to see S3 put one is something like this. So what I'm going to stick with the hello world, the sample one, and you can edit. Let's say I'm saying test demo. This is our test payload. So either you can save it or you can test it. You can click on the test. What you can see the actual payload is coming. And if you go back, and if you, let's say we save in the test event, the test event got saved. If we go back to our code, and here, so under this test drop down, we can see the test one, the one that we created. So you can select and click on test. Okay, here we go. We can see the test event is this, and the response is 200 with the body hello lambda. But just wondering why we can't see the actual console.log event. The issue is whenever you do some changes in the code, you must deploy. Otherwise you can't see the latest changes. As you can see, changes are not deployed. What you have to do, we have to deploy. So it's take a few seconds based on the code. And if you go back to again and click on the test, right, how we can see the event should be somewhere here. Okay, you can see the function logs in event, and the key is this and the test demo one. So if we change the, we can go to the test and we can change the demo 1 2 3, save it. If I go back test, and again if I run, you can see our payload is reflecting. So this is how you can do the testing our Lambda in console itself, right? So we will do some test, couple of execution, because we need to go to the monitor and see the stuff. And furthermore, let's do the throttling. Let's try the throttling, and you can see the edit throttling, the function has been throttled. That's fine. Now if I do go to test, and if I test this, what's going to happen, it says calling the invoke API function fail with this message, red text is it, because it's not. We will do some tries, and because we need to see in the monitor later on. Once we come to the monitor, we will see this monitor. All the CloudWatch metrics are for a specific this function are located here, and really helpful to see how does this function perform. You can see how many invocation are total, and many more metrics. Furthermore, you can see the CloudWatch logs. If you click on the CloudWatch logs, you can see our custom logs are sits on here. So we are in the CloudWatch service, and if we go further down and click on the last log file, what we can see, it has some, it's come with some information. It says the runtime when it started, and what's the runtime and start time, and then our logs and when it's finished, and plus it shows okay at the end, it shows okay how long it took, and how much memory it took to process. So these are the for in this case, what you can see, we have a memory size of 128, but it's used 65 MB, and duration it took like duration 86.84 milliseconds. Right, then if I go back to Lambda, there are other options come with this other option. For example, X-Ray, Lambda Insight, and Code Gurus comes with the extra charges and need to enable specifically. We will go and enable in the configuration section later in a minute. And this X-Ray of Lambda Insight and Code Guru are more important to find out the performance issue and troubleshooting. For example, the Lambda is start to slow, and at the beginning it's very slow, so it could be more likely the call started. Those kind of issue we can find through the Lambda Insight. I will cover this feature more detail in under different video, which is troubleshooting. So please stay touch on all this in action. Configuration tab. The configuration tab has most of the important setting for this Lambda. So there are few configuration in under configuration. So let's go with each one. The first one is a general configuration. Here you can update how much memory we need to allocate it for this function and timeout. So if you click on the edit, and you can update the description, and under memory, this is the memory AWS allocated to this function. Support up to 10 GB. You can go with the up to 10 GB, and the CPU for this function is allocated proportionally to the memory configure. So if you increase the memory, it's a CPU, more CPU you get. The less memory, less CPU. Ephemeral storage. So again, it support to up to 10 GB. This is the storage you get for the save file etc. For it. This is a as mentioned, is the name implies, it's a temporary. This storage can be used to store temporary processing file, and again it support up to 10 GB. The other one is a snapshot, only support for the Java and helps to reduce startup time using the caching. The other one is timeout. So maximum time it's allocated to run this function for given execution. After reaching timeout, the Lambda throw error. This has a hard limit, which is 15 minutes. Then the execution role. This is a role which assigned to the function which allow to perform operation. In our case, this role was created automatically, if you remember. And quickly check this role. If you click on this role, and it will open in the new tab. And what you can see, it's attached a policy which allow to create the logs. So you can see there are two statements. One is creating the logs, other one is a create log stream and put logs. Of course, you can update you can add more permission to this role, which enable and it expand the scope of the Lambda function. That's all in general tabs. If you go back and click on the triggers, all the triggers for the function will be here. For example, if we add a S3 trigger, for example, this button and this one both does the same thing. If we click on add trigger, let's say we added S3 event. Let's say S3 event. Let's say I do have a test bucket, which is called bucket, and event type. Let's say we are creating for all event type, and I'm not giving any prefix or suffix, and click on the acknowledgement and click on add. Once you add, yes, it's added. You can see here, and plus under trigger you can see the S3 bucket. So you can add more triggers, and all the triggers will be shown here. So you can see some of the information on the here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to delete, because we are not going to do any demos in this video. Close it. Next one is a permission. It has the same role which we saw under general tab. If you go back to general configuration and click on the edit, you can see this is ending with the 6G, and the same role you can see under permission. So what you can see here, it shows what are the resources it can action. It has, this role has, and what are the action they can do on top of that. Of course, you can go to this role and update, which expand the capability of the Lambda. Further down, it has something called resource-based policy statement. This allow who can access this Lambda. I have a video for detailed explanation of AWS IAM. You can see the link in the top, or you can see the particular link for the video in the description section. Please follow if you need to know more about IAM policy and more about AWS IAM. It's cover the resource-based policy statement. And plus for the auditing and the compliance, so you can use some service called CloudTrail to audit this Lambda. Then let's go to the destination and the function URL, what we already talked, And if I go to the environment variable, this is the next one. This has the same concept like other conventional application. Example, your C# or Node.js application reads some environment specific values from the app settings file or environment variable. The same way you can save environment variable here as a key value pair. For example, if you click on that, you can add a variable. Let's say name. Let's say this is a prod environment, something like that. Plus you can encrypt, you can use some configuration, you want to encrypt these values. Right. If we go to next one, the tags and VPC we talk about. Currently we are not attached to any VPC, and the other bit is monitoring and operational tools. So monitoring and operation, under this we do have a two section, the login configuration and the additional monitoring tool. The login configuration, this is the basic log which we saw in the CloudWatch Logs. You can change the log format. If you click on that, you can change the log format into text to JSON, and you can change the custom log group. Basically default one is something like demo1, and you can change it, and some permission. Of course, if you don't have a permission, this will add a permission to your Lambda. The additional monitoring tool. So these are the advanced monitoring tool which enable X-ray, Lambda Insight, and code profiling. If you click on edit, you can see this one, advanced active tracing mean X-ray, and the Lambda Insight, and the code guru profiler. Currently it's disabled because the Node.js doesn't support code profiler. So if you click on that, you can see what are the available support runtime. So currently Node.js not part of the profiler, it doesn't support. You can enable, and same thing is extension permission. And if I go to the demo one again, go back. Yeah, that's how you enable the additional monitoring and the change in the log configuration. Again, so the additional monitoring tool come with the extra charges. AWS charge more, but it's really helpful to find out the issue and troubleshooting the issue when there's something goes wrong. Then the another important thing is concurrency. The concurrency is an important topic when consider the performance. For free tier, I'm talking about the first one. For the free tier, maximum concurrency is 10 for this account. For non-free tier, once you start paying, so it is 1,000. You can reserve limit. So if you click on that, you can reserve limit specifically for this Lambda, and the rest of the concurrency is shared by other Lambdas in this account. Let's say you have 20 Lambdas, so if we reserve a 2 concurrency for this, the 8 of the other unreserved concurrency we share with the other Lambdas. And then the provisions concurrency configuration. This is really important. Reserve concurrency is free. This is the first one. This is free, but where the provision concurrency come with the extra charges. This one come with extra charges. With the provision concurrency, you can allocate dedicated concurrency for this function. One is done. Example, if we added a 5 provision concurrency, AWS is spin up a 5 instance of this Lambda always. This allow to minimize the call start. So if you're wondering what is the call start is something like this. Though Lambda is a serverless service, but under the AWS they needs environment to run your code. If you don't have a provision concurrency, the runtime environment is getting built. The runtime environment is getting built when the first request come to the function. It's not set up the environment before. After some point, the runtime environment is down if the no more requests come to this Lambda. To set up the runtime environment could take time, and will that Lambda function, until that the Lambda function is not executed. So this initial delay is called call start. So with the provision concurrency, what's happening, AWS spin up a runtime before hit the first request, and always keep the runtime environment without destroying. So that is help to minimize the cold start and reduce the latency. So we can enable provision concurrency on Alias. If you go to here, you can click on the add. You can enable provision so Alias and the version. We will see this in a coming video as an example. As you mentioned, so it's gonna cost more to increase the allocate the provision concurrency. Then the other one is asynchronous invocation. If the Lambda is triggered by the other AWSs like S3 or the SQS, then this configuration is get affected. The Lambda is automatically retry if something goes wrong. For example, let's say Lambda is triggered by the SQS message and failed to process the message. The Lambda function is retry the same message again and again based on this setting. If it is a set 1, it's try only 1. If it is 2, it try twice. The default and maximum limit is a 2. Then the dead letter queue. Again, these settings come with the kind of same scenario as we mentioned in the earlier. Even after maximum try, let's say after we set the maximum retry is 2, even for the after 2 retries, the message is failed to process. Then the message can be pushed to SNS or SQS. So if you select the SQS, you can select the existing queue. So that message pushed to the SQS queue, and later on the developer or people who are responsible, they can have a go and have a do the troubleshooting. Next one is code signing. Code signing we talked about in the earlier, and if we go to the RDS database, so if the Lambda function need to talk to database, then we can create a database connection over here. So it support many RDS database, and we will see some demo in the later on. And the next one is a file system. If the given peripheral storage is not enough, for example, if you go to the general configuration, you have 512, and that peripheral storage is not enough, then you need to talk to or not enough, or you need to talk to the existing file system. Then you can attach file system to this Lambda. So the Lambda can read and write data to the file system. As the name implies, the peripheral storage exists only for the certain time. It's a very short time. That means when the time of the execution of the Lambda. The execution is finished, the peripheral storage will be lost. So, but if you use a file system, the data won't be lost. You can keep forever. Then the last one is a state machine. I talked this earlier, and we will see in action later. So if you want to do some workflow and you need to use Lambda function, that is where you can use state function or step function later. So Alias, that's the last one. So Alias and versioning. Right. So I'll suppose to cover it with the demo, so it will be easy to understand with a more practical example on the Alias and the version. Right. One thing I forgot to mention under the code, if you scroll down, it's come with some information about what the package size and the SHA value of this package plus runtime setting. You can change the runtime setting over here. One thing is implement the handler. So the handler, what is it? This handler. The handler is the entry point for the function. So if you say index.handler, that means index is a file name, and the handler is the function initial method or function. So it could be vary because depending on the runtime or the language you are choosing. Please make sure the handler is matching with the initial entry point. On top of that, the layers I have mentioned, layers something you can inject some utility library. For example, if you talk about the AWS Node 18 on AWS come with the AWS SDK version 3. Let's say if you want to use node 18, but still you need to use you want to use AWS SDK 2, that's where you can use layers. So this kind of thing we will do in a demo. That's really helpful, and a later video. Right, hopefully I covered most of the concept of the Lambda. This is an introduction of the Lambda, and we will go through more with a more practical example of integration with the other services, handling securities, finding and fine-tuning performance, reducing cost, of course it's another topic, and many more in coming videos. As mentioned, if you like to see any specific topic of the Lambda, please comment below. I'll try to prioritize them. Lastly, please like and subscribe if you like this video. Really appreciate it. Furthermore, click on the bell icon, will notify you for my future videos, so you won't miss any. Right, that is that's all about for the today video. We will see another demo video on Lambda function. Have a great day. Thanks.